Vice Commissioner.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for this Thursday, September 30th, 2021. It's 1:33 p.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my right is Commissioner Carolina Mejia. Commissioner Edwards is excused today. Not the Vice Chair, the County Manager, Ramiro Chavez, is to my left. And Megan Porter is with us from Public Information. We've got Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell in her gold heavenly light. And we've got the county engineer and some public works team that are going to help us get an update on fish passage program. We've got an hour slated. The public can follow along on the YouTube channel. And with that, I'm going to go right to County Manager to give us a setup and onward.
Thank you. First of all, I'd really like to say thank you to Ryan. That was an awesome 3D printer job that you did for all of us. So much appreciated, Ryan. Good job. And also, this is really a good, I'm personally looking forward to this presentation and update related to the very successful fish barrier enhancement program. The Board of County Commissioners really took the leadership maybe 3-4 years ago to set aside significant amount of money to start working in resolving some of the barriers that we have related to the fish habitat. And as a matter of perspective, as you may know, the Washington State, particularly the Department of Transportation, is under a court order for them to resolve and eliminate the fish barrier constraints that we have in their system. Again, the county is not under those orders, and again, we have taken the proactive action to see, because I see we see the value and the benefit to the environment and taking those steps. With that in mind, Scott?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Scott Lindblom, County Engineer with Public Works. And just to start out, I want to echo the County Manager's comments, and that we are making a significant difference in improving the habitat for salmon in our county, thanks to your leadership. So we greatly appreciate that. Today, we're here just to give you an update on our program itself and the progress through the end of this year. We're going to project out another month or two. But this is an informational briefing only. We're not looking for any decision at this point. And one of the other gifts we will be giving you is the gift of time. Well, we do have an hour blocked out for this briefing. We do expect to be done with the presentation in, say, 20 to 25 minutes, leaving plenty of time for questions, and then an opportunity for you to take a breather before your next meeting. So overall, we have been very successful so far, and we have a track record of typically completing several projects each year, which means removing barriers that have been in place for, in some cases, 100 years or more. We've been very successful in that. We always look to evaluate our process to make sure we're working on the right projects, on the right streams at the right times. So as we look ahead, we balance our resources and continue to look at those projects that give us the biggest bang for our buck. That's something we have done and we will continue to do. And so at some point in the future, it could be 5, 10, 15 years out there, we don't really know. So we may end up going from the 4 barrier removals this year at some point in the future to less than that, maybe 1 or 2 or some other number of barriers, I guess, we'd remove. But we do continue to evolve, but that's a point that we'll be looking at somewhere down the road. For now, we do have a couple of priority projects lined up for the next few years that will continue to make a difference in our community. So with that, I will turn it over to just some of the folks that represent what I've called Team Fish. They are the ones that are some of the ones that are really making this happen. So I'll kick it over to Trevin right now.
There we go. Probably unmuting myself helps. So, anyways, my name is Trevin Taylor. I'm the Senior Environmental Coordinator for Public Works, and I manage the environmental half of the fish program. And it's definitely a highlight and just a great opportunity and fun thing I've been able to do since I started here in 2017.
Hello, I'm Marcus Storvik. I'm a civil engineer, kind of leading the engineering side. And before I jump right into it, I just want to make sure, can everybody see the screen, the first title page?
Yep, yes. We're all good.
Okay. All right, we're all good. Awesome. Thank you. So yeah, I'm kind of headed up the engineering side of the house. Also online, we have Ryan Blazer, another civil engineer, and Elena Fernandez, another environmental coordinator. And as the county engineer mentioned, this makes up Team Fish, and we're really happy to come to you today to give an update on the program. And like the county engineer pointed out, we'd love to take questions at the end. Also, if something jumps out, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to make this an interaction, but we definitely do have some slides ready to go here, and we're just happy to do so. So before we kind of jump into it, Trevin would love to give just a quick update on where we've kind of started in the initial injuncture.
Yeah, so in 2017, the board, along with Mr. Chavez, decided that it's time to basically get proactive in trying to remove anadromous fish blotches throughout Thurston County with the lawsuit that came through the DOT. DOT basically, under the injunction or the culvert case, some people know, is required to remove anadromous fish blockage through DOT projects throughout the state. And basically they have a couple sideboards. One of them is basically to make sure that they meet a thing called stream sim, and also to make sure that's also anadromous fish. We've modeled our program around basically the opportunity to always be able to stand up in court if we're ever challenged for any of these projects, to show that we're meeting the same standards that the state is, that the court case basically said. So that has been our mission. And also take the money that you have granted us and see if we can make it stretch through winning additional grants and things like that. So that's a real quick background on where we started.
And it was also definitely a proactive approach that the county took. And where we started was inventorying all of our culverts that are barriers, like Trevin mentioned, to anadromous fish, salmon and coho in particular here in our county. And once we had that inventory of barriers, we were able then to rank them on several criteria to see which ones would be most feasible to go after first. We typically have gotten about 2 to 3 in every construction season, but as the county engineer mentioned, we just try to get the most bang for our buck, considering costs and habitat gain and other factors as well.
So to kind of understand why we go after anadromous fish, you kind of need to know the client. And the client is basically COHO for Thurston County. It is our most dominant salmon species. And they basically have a very unique life pattern. So if you look on the left picture there, you'll actually see us working in that pool on a site called Hunter Point. Every picture that you're going to see today is actually from projects that you have helped us sponsor and get to. So nothing's cooked. This is all from our work over the since 2017. And I want you to notice that the water is rather brackish. That's because basically sediment is settle in there, and there's no fines, there's no wood, there's nothing to trap the material to allow for future spawning or spawning gravels to go downstream. You'll also see in the background there's what we call a perched covert. We'll talk about that a little bit more on the right. Now, coho are unique. Once they basically spawn, they create a nest color red, and the small fish come out of the red and they lose their egg sac, and they go as far upstream as they can get within just weeks of coming out of the red or the egg nest. So the middle picture is actually hundreds of coho that we have been able to pull out of that stream right there. Now, the unique thing about this site on Hunter Point is that the third picture is actually a fish that's been in there for a year. That fellow is on his way back out to the system. And that is basically then going to return in 3 to 4 years, and we start the process all over again. Now, Thurston County, you're going to see some dry streams in these pictures. Now, that's since the Ice Age, these fish have basically adapted to get as far up into those systems to find estuaries and wetlands to make it for that year. Our program takes into account, when I talk salmon, a lot of you have seen this before, I talk salmon, not salmon. So remember, we're trying to get the little guys through the system, and the beauty about using coho as our model is that if we can get these guys through the system, we get a whole lot of side benefits, and the fish have a much higher survival and escapement rate.
So what we're looking at here is just a quick overview of where we've done these projects, and you can see they're scattered all throughout the county. The green ones are what we've done to date, and then a couple that we're highlighting for 2020 and beyond. But to date, we're looking at 11 total projects constructed and 21 barriers corrected. And when I say barriers corrected, we refer to each culvert that we remove and replace in kind, or with a larger structure. That's a single barrier. So a lot of these projects can have multiple barriers on them. And we're going to jump into the 2018 to 2019 projects that we did. And to kind of give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about, we'll use examples of a perch culvert, velocity barrier, and an undersized culvert on projects we've already constructed. So that's kind of highlight what type of common problems we see across the county. So from 2018 to 2019, we were able to complete 6 different projects. The first example, as Trevin kind of alluded to earlier, it was a perch culvert at Hunter Point. So you see Trevin standing down there underneath the culvert. That was a total blockage. There's no way fish can jump up through there, and this was considered a barrier. That picture on the left is actually circling the same barrier you saw on the previous slide, but now you get a sense of the scale of the solution we came in. So this was Hunter Point, constructed 2018. And we came in with a 80-foot long prefabricated bridge. The prefabricated bridge is a great solution for these perch culverts. One of our most favorite solutions, just because it allows a lot of daylight for the creek. These are great structures that last anywhere from 70 to 80 years. Great for low volume roads, which is a lot of these culverts are located across the county, and are just a great cost-effective solution for these problems.
Now, as Marcus alluded to, daylighting allows to growth. And here we are in 2021, basically the same location. And now you can see actually the second growth of basically will someday become a riparian zone, just like the one behind the bridge. And on the right side, I want to point out is we had a great recruitment of natural alder that come in that's going to help keep that bank even going faster. And if you're aware of how fast alder grow, it's going to look much different even the next time we get to show you this presentation and an update of this site. Once again, I want you to notice that now where the picture is at, you might not be able to tell right away, but a lot of that material is now starting to recruit downstream, and wood and other materials are now getting into that stream. And where I was standing previously, where all that sediment was, is now a great spawning gravel area. And now fish can also, at the right time of year, they can go up and down the system. So don't let the dry stream fool you. It's actually working the way it's supposed to. And how do we know that?
And before we get to that, one thing to point out is on the bottom right, you'll see the $1.6 million price tag. On all these projects, we'll be showcasing the total project cost. So that's construction, design, right of way, everything that takes to get this project. So in this case, 100.1.6. But to go back to what Trevin was saying, here's that evidence.
So we have a video that a lot of you have seen before that is actually the first run of COHO salmon going under that bridge in 100 years. And we know it's over 100 years because we actually found the survey data from when it was filled in from the railroad. Now, this was my favorite picture, my favorite video that we'd show in this presentation, but I think it's surpassed now. So what we're looking at now is mission accomplished. We're actually meet the grandchildren, is what I've called this picture. What you'll see over Elena's shoulder is actually now we're upstream from Hunter Point. And what you see her looking at is actually a stream that has been created because that material can now properly go downstream. And inside that stream is rearing coho. So the rearing coho are the offspring from some of those fish that we actually caught in the first year they went through the system. This is really about as good as it gets. Now, the beauty of that stream, it goes up into this wonderful wetland that's way up on the top that has lots of different diversity to it. So, like I said, you build it, they will come is one of the things we've said for a lot of years. And this here, we're going to have them coming for generations to come.
So moving on from Hunter Point, what you're seeing pictures here is the PEIISSNER Road at Tobotten Creek project. This was the project we constructed in 2019. Now, this is an example of undersized culverts. There on the bottom left picture, you actually see 3 culverts lined side by side up, which were the existing barriers, and it's really nicely framed in with the new structure. This was an open bottom aluminum box culvert. We also call them 3-sided structures because they have no bottom to them. These undersized culverts can be a result of years after years understanding that there's just not enough capacity in that culvert. So they come in and add another one and add another one. And it really prohibits fish passage, the transport of sediment, large wooded debris, and really creates an unhealthy environment for that stream and the fish that are there. So in this case with Tobotten Creek, we came in and replaced it with a 3-sided culvert. And there on the right, you see a year later, the nice cobbles and boulders there forming the channel underneath the road. Here's a great shot for before and after. 2 years later, it's a really, really ugly looking picture there on the left, but on the right, you see that the vegetation's already starting to establish. The creek is still flowing, and it's just really coming together nicely.
So velocity barriers. This is Wattle Creek, one that you've seen before. The picture is actually taken once again from a video. Due to the restrictions on Zoom, we've tried to show the video before and it's chopped up. But Marcus, in the red there, you can actually see a full-size coho trying to get upstream. Now, this is a full-size fish, and this is during high flood. Actually, Scott Lindblom caught this years ago, and as the story goes, he didn't even realize that he had a fish in the picture till he got it back on the computer. But this video has kind of been pretty famous. We've showed it from California to Washington, and in the video, basically the fish tries to hit that water, gets blown backwards onto the rock, and there's basically a mass of white water. The other problem when we have undersized culverts like this is that we end up with a backwater. Now that backwater can then create flooding, which is what's happening here at Wattle Creek from time to time. That water then goes over the road and can transport all the materials from the road into the stream. So we get trapped on fish a lot, but these projects can lead to some great water quality fixes as well. And this is an example of that. Here we go. Now, same exact flood scale. This is with the new culvert that we put in. This is a aluminum, first aluminum culvert actually put into the county. Has a hard bottom due to soils. Marcus will talk a little bit more about that. But the fact is, now you can see that the white water, the boiling water from the sides, the velocity's down. This is the same exact flood level now with the new culvert in place. And once again, no water going over the road, and fish can go back and forth. And happy to report we have fish rearing upstream of this site as well.
Yeah, another mission accomplished in here, and you can start to see the before and after, and this is actually the exact same angle shot. You can see the light pole in the background there of the same angle, and as Trevin was mentioning, in this case, it was a four-sided structure, and we like to say we find the right side structure for each one of these sites. In this case, it was a soils issue. The four-sided allow a little bit more stability to the structure that we came in and replaced. But you can see we provided three different examples: prefabricated bridge, three-sided culvert, and now a four-sided culvert. So moving on here, a quick overview of the 2020 construction season. We were able to complete three different projects last year. The first one up was PEISSNER Road at Elbow Lake Creek. This one was a velocity barrier there on the left. It also recruited a lot of sediment and material upstream that was not able to get through. This was another great opportunity for us to come in and do a prefabricated bridge solution, 60 foot long there on the right. And another thing to point out with this project is we actually received, I do believe it was an $80,000 grant from the Nisqually tribe. So we'll start to see here that we try to leverage as much REAP funding as we can to get additional support. The other project, second project last year, was the Case Road at Beaver Creek Tributary. There on the left, you actually see our model, the traffic engineer, Matt Unsman. He's pointing to a pool of COHO that are just downstream of that existing barrier. You can see the rebar actually poking out of that concrete culvert. So it's broken and it's prohibiting the passage of fish upstream. There on the right, again, from the same angle downstream, is the new 16-foot wide open bottom culvert that we came in and replaced. The fun story with this one is actually we got a $500,000, $500,000 grant from the Federal Highway Administration Board. And this project has already received one a general contractor award for excellence, and we're nominated for an additional award. So we hope to get this one on the trophy shelf as well here soon.
Jones Road. So Jones Road, as you can see, once again, we're back to our shotgun culverts. You know, back in the old days, if one didn't fix it, we'll put in another. And like I said, you create velocity and you trap sediment. This is a very unique site, and we were able to basically use county crews for this. Now, we don't get to do that very often because they're very busy during the summer and it takes a lot of scheduling. But when we do have a savings when we're able to do this, and the crews really enjoy it and they do a great job for us. Once again, this is one of our prefab bridges. They have a lifespan of 50 to 75 years. Now, we call this site Don't Judge a Book by its cover. We knew that we had anadromous fish there, but it had another story waiting for us that we did not really expect. So on the left is actually a bag of fish, one of about 20 that I moved out of there. Now, we think salmon all the time, but there's also, when we do this, we have benefit to lots of other species. That one bag of fish has about 5 to 6 different species alone in it. And Marcus, if you could use the pointer, you'll see some of you have heard me talk about Olympic mud minnow before. That is a priority habitat species for Washington State and is only in Washington State. It's uncommon, and it's one to be looked at. Well, we found actually a place where they are doing quite well, along with about 4 or 5 other species. Then on the right side, you're going to see the one with what we call par marks, or the bars on them right there. That is actually first and second year coho, all living in the same segment of stream. Now, when we find something like this, we got to do some adaptive management. The old way of doing things was just you threw in more salmon gravel and you try to make spawning ground everywhere. If we were to do that, we would actually limit that priority limits the species. For instance, the Olympic mud minnow, we would create less habitat for a species that needs it. In this case, we had very viable habitat, found it we're an extremely productive stream, and really surpassed all our expectations. And I actually moved fish daily for about 2 weeks because they were so aggressive getting back into the site. Pretty amazing little side story that we didn't expect.
Shifting gears again here, looking at what we've got going on this year. So we have our LATIGO and Chehalis Western Trail Spurgeon Creek project, and also 2 sites along Gate Road that are going on right now. And I do want to point out that I know there has been some questions on the pronunciation. Is it LATIGO? Is it LATIGO? We actually reached out to a local historian, somebody who's lived there, his family history. It is LATIGO because that is the term for the strap that's underneath a horse's saddle. So a lot of horse owners historically in that area, they named the street LATIGO. But Trevin's got the scoop on this one.
So $1.7 million from Brian Abbott. This is actually, we're extremely proud of the fact we won this grant. It's a very hard grant to win, and Thurston County is not a priority watershed as a whole. So we basically were behind the 8 ball from the start. But this project had so much merit that we actually were able to score very well, and were able to win this very large grant, very competitive grant. And it's basically 2 projects in one. So you got to see the PEISSNER Road job earlier, and you got to see the famous Hunter Point site. This is both of those in one location. So if you see the truck going over the bottom road, that is LATIGO Road itself. And you can actually see 2 culverts poking out of the side there. Marcus, you might want to show them a little bit with the pointer there. So there's 2 of our famous shotgun culverts in a very large wetland complex that goes upstream. On the bottom is now standing on the road looking downstream, and it actually has 2 more culverts inside a very large fill. So we basically have 4 culverts total, creating 4 blockages, 4 velocity issues, and then of course on the right is the look from downstream back up at the site. And this is once again a very large railroad fill. We're figuring, I counted some tree rings and things. I think that probably it's well over 75 to 80 years old when we had to take down some trees this year to get the project started. So it's basically, it's a challenging project, but really one that you only get to see every 20 years. Pretty neat.
So there on the left, you see actually that same picture of those 2 bicycles standing on the existing barriers. But now, of course, on the right, again, same angle. You're downstream of the site looking up. And this is what it looks like today. This is during the construction. So this is now phase 1 complete. The trail portion, the trail bridge is in. You can actually see the overlook right there at mid-span that I've actually received already positive feedback from trail users, word of mouth, that they absolutely love that feature of the bridge. Some other things we love pointing out in that picture on the right is the trees and the root wads that you see sunken into the stream bank. We call those large woody debris, LWD. And we had the opportunity to have Fish and Wildlife and members of the Squaxin tribe on site while we were placing that material, because they were very involved in the permitting process, and we received feedback that they will actually now use this site as an example for the state to follow on how to install these habitat features. So great success there. The other thing to point out, oh yeah, go ahead, Trevor, jump in.
No, I was going to say, I wanted to make sure that it's a really good shot at the scale of the culverts. Again, if you see back on LATIGO Road there, is the 2 culverts that will come out next summer. So when we do phase 2 with the 65-foot bridge, so give you an idea of the scale of what the stream will look like, and the opening that it's going to create for fish and other species.
We'll get a really good shot next year of standing on the county road looking downstream, and you'll be able to look right underneath that trail bridge.
So other species, once again, I pointed out that wetland. So this is a western bittern heron. It's very rare to spot one, but out there on our fish nets, we were out there one day and it basically jumped down on the net to do some fishing of its own. They freeze up. They actually go from the Arctic all the way down to southern Mexico. But besides, what I really have that picture in here is to remind everybody that these projects, once again, we get so caught in thinking about fish and fish passage. The net benefit to other species is really huge. Out here, we've spotted everything from peregrine falcon working in the area, large blue heron almost on a daily basis, and of course, other rare species such as this one here. So when we provide more fish, more habitat, more access, able to fly under and around these bridges and things, it really creates things from the air all the way down to terrestrial species, from deer that no longer now walking on the road, they're passing underneath the structures, to everything from porcupine to raccoon. And so basically we'll talk a little bit more about that on a project that we're working with as well. But for the most part, we want to think outside of just the water and take into account some of the area as well, as far as other species and the opportunities that come along with these projects.
All right, so now we have Gate Road at Baker Creek. So Gate Road, this project has 3 total barriers, 2 sites that are within about 500 feet of each other. The one that we're looking at now at Baker Creek has 2 30-inch side-by-side shotgun culverts. You can see Elena standing there on the upstream end of those. A lot of sediment buildup on that upstream side. You can see that the culverts are undersized and a slope barrier, and also you can maybe see on the right side on that picture, Elena, again, standing on the downstream side, the water is coming out pretty quickly on there. And there's actually a lot of scour in the stream bed there due to the velocity coming out pretty fast. And this stream, it looks fairly small, but size and can be deceiving on how many fish you can pull out of it, like Trevin pointed out earlier. And so we've been constructing this one, as you can see here on the left. This is under the 28 by 28 prefabbed bridge that we installed. You can see the bridge there up on top, the stream going through, and then the existing or the previous 2 culverts there, again, side by side, just to show you how much we were able to open this one up as well. And then on the right, this is downstream looking upstream. Again, you can see how much of an impact that opening that up gave to us at this location. And then up the road about 500 feet, we have another barrier at the MIMA Creek tributary. You can see Trevin there on the upstream end of that culvert. You can barely see it. If you're driving over it, you probably wouldn't think twice that you were crossing over a culvert that has fish and other wildlife present there. And then on the right picture, you can see downstream, the creek makes a very unnatural turn to run adjacent to the roadway. It's not likely that we constructed the road to run right alongside the stream. So this project actually gave us an opportunity to return and restore the stream to a more natural alignment and really give benefit to this area and this habitat. So you can see again that picture of Trevin on top of the existing 18-inch culvert, or the previous, I'll say, and then during construction here, we have one of the construction workers replicating that pose on the box culvert. This is a 4-sided box culvert, and you can see how we really opened that up. And on the right, we again were able to have a restoration piece, which is pretty unique to this project, or to our program, but really allowed us to collaborate and coordinate with WDFW for the property that they have there to open this up for enhanced habitat.
And one thing to mention to Ryan's comments is that the $2 million you see in the bottom right is actually combined for Baker Creek and MIMA Creek. So for both Gate Road projects, approximately $2 million total project cost.
So just to reiterate, these projects are fish projects, but they do benefit a diverse set of fish and wildlife. So just on the Gate Road projects, for example, we found these 3 species of anadromous fish: your rainbow trout or your steelhead, cutthroat trout, and your COHO. These fish were relocated prior to construction. But we also saw terrestrial animals, during the construction of these two projects. This included elk, black bear, river otters, birds, and deer. And the Gate Road projects, like Ryan mentioned, they're kind of special because they were located adjacent to that newly acquired WDFW conservation land. So we were able to work in cooperation with our restoration piece. And, it's these kinds of projects and partnerships that we form that can help us, in future grants and future projects. So, they're really important.
Yeah, one little tidbit on that: Fish and Wildlife is basically already wanting to work pretty close with Elaine and I to on our little off-channel section there to enhance it for Oregon spotted frog, an actual federal endangered species, one of 2 special endangered species for Thurston County. So we're actually providing habitat for ESA listed species as well, which is a very unique opportunity for any project anywhere in the U.S.
Yep, and definitely secondary benefits to our program. So speaking of grants, so far the program's been very successful and awarded 5 grants totaling $2.4 million. So this allows the program, these grants allow us to leverage the funds totaling about 30 cents of grant funding per dollar of county funds spent. So, I mean, that's a huge return on investment. And then this number keeps changing. We were recently awarded actually $45,000 from the Salmon Recovery Funding Board on their September 23rd meeting for a 2022 project located on Little Rock Road. So we're continuing to try to leverage funds and help impact, our communities. And so, these projects, like I said, they translate to economic benefits as well, not just ecological, and so positive impacts for our constituents. According to the 2010 study conducted by University of Oregon, they found that for every $1 million spent on habitat projects or fish passage projects like our program, up to 20 jobs are created and up to $1.4 million of additional funds are spent within that local community. And these funds are spent on materials at nurseries and other supplies for construction. Most of the benefits are seen in rural areas where lots of these projects actually occur. So even though the study is dated, it is from 2010, just kind of a preliminary literature review shows that these data still hold up, and the numbers are still representative of the actual economic benefit to our constituents.
A non-project update we have, just more program-wide, is we've actually been able to install these signs that you see here in the picture, and also have seen the replicas now presented. Thank you, Ryan. Shout out to him. Good work. That you see these signs all at the 11 projects that we've done to date. The fun part about this is that actually was designed and created in-house by our sign staff, and we'll actually be adding an additional sign underneath Thurston County project completed year of construction. So to give some identifier to us and also the program as you go out to these different sites. Another piece of our public outreach arm is actually Trevin and I have already had the opportunity to do 2 presentations this year, COVID style, and do it virtually. We would love to have this even today in person, but we will definitely do our best to still do public outreach, and we were able to present to the Leadership Thurston County group and also the Tumwater Rotary group just this year. And to wrap it up for today, just a quick overview of where we've been so far since inception in 2017. So like I said before, 11 total projects, 21 barriers corrected, and this brings about 14 miles of habitat opened. One of the things you'll hear Trevin and I and everybody else talk about is also thousands of acres of wetlands open up. That's a little hard to quantify. So just kind of keep in mind not only 14 miles of stream habitat, but also additional wetland access. Looking at rough total project costs, we're coming out about $1 million per mile. So that's total project cost. That doesn't include the grants to subtract that. compared to about the DOT project costs about $5 million per mile. And like Elena mentioned, $2.4 million in grants awarded, about to be another $45,000. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us, and we'd love to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I mean, just great presentation. It just really, I mean, for my first year here, it definitely gives me a better picture of all the projects that are coming through on the agenda. And I mean, for me, LATIGO, we've heard about that a couple times, and just seeing the actual impact of it is pretty great. And so thank you.
Okay, I got a few. So, in no particular order, when the court decided that the state had to replace culverts, the county, like this, my understanding, just correct me if I've got this right, the tribe sued the state. So the court decision relates to the state, although they could have included local governments and probably will, like if it, you know, that's kind of what was kind of our motivation to kind of get ahead of this, because, you know, I'm curious as to why the tribes didn't sue everyone, honestly. I mean, everybody's involved in these fish passages. We've got to get them all open, really, not just the ones that the state has. If the county's ones are, it's such a crazy patchwork of them. I've heard in the Chehalis Basin, for example, there's 2,500 culverts. I mean, good grief. And they're not all state. Those are probably more local, to be honest, because it's more rural. Anyway, am I right about that? That, you know, the state's got the court like timeline, but it's possible that we could end up in the same place down the road sometime.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in there a little bit, because I actually have been following the culvert case for over 20 years. I was actually a Quileute biologist back when it started. And once they actually, you know, we knew clear back when I was a tribal biologist that there was meat on that bone, that eventually they were going to win. And they chose the right state agency to go after because they have the most interaction with the streams. And I can tell you that, you know, the precedent is set. So at some point they will, you know, they'll come after basically to get the rest of them fixed. And I think one of the ideas early on was to make sure that we had a defensible approach for when that day happens. And the kind of the beauty of this is we might be protecting our liability, but what a great way to protect your liability, fixing this stuff out and getting a great fix for, you know, generations to come. Yeah. So, you know, it's a really, like I said, yes, the program was built out of making sure that we're protecting our liability and that our sites we choose would stand up in court if we're challenged. And we're also very unique because you give us money for fish, which also allows me to use a streamlined approach to the permitting process to allow fish projects. So as long as that money's tagged as for fish first, you're very defendable. And like I said, we can show we're trying to be proactive from the time we knew that the court case had been settled. So that's my 2 bits on it.
So how do we, this is a different question. When you were talking about the money we got from Surfboard, for example, for some project on Little Rock Road, I mean, I guess I'm curious, like, how do we compete for that kind of money? I mean, there's 1 million culverts in 1 million counties and not enough money. What makes what makes us stand ahead of the pack and be able to get money, that small amount of money for one particular project? Like, what makes the project stand out, given that there's so many?
Elena, I'm going to steal a little bit of your thunder and then you fill in, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to tell you right now, it's because we're funded. We have taken basically the opportunity to apply for grants upside down. Most of the time, people are trying to get their matching money together. We're the other way around. We come in saying that we know you have money. We want you to partner on these projects that we plan on building. And then Elena, you can go into the process, and once we kind of set that precedent that we're upside down on how everybody else does it in the state.
Right. And so, you know, depending on the funding source, you know, they do have a set of criteria, you know, and it's also dependent on that the grantors or the grant organization's mission. So at least the grants that I've been applying for, you know, their priority is for, you know, certain streams, like streams that carry Chinook. for example, or if they're in a priority watershed, they may have a few more points. But I think the largest reason why we, as Thurston County, have been able to win some of these grants is, just like Trevin said, it's, we're walking in with money, and we're not trying to piece together and piecemeal match. We're able to ask these funding agencies to partner with us, on this endeavor, and they're able, then able to maybe help some of these other, some other organizations that may, be trying to put their projects together. So, we've just been really successful in that way. There is a review process, and it is pretty stringent, and their criteria are, and their scoring is very, in their case, definitely defensible, and they have a very clear set of criteria. But we just have great projects, and benefiting a lot of species.
And it's great getting ownership from other groups on these. It takes everybody to fix this stuff. And whenever we can nail one of these grants, they're a partner. And it's a great way to get a lot of ownership on these as well.
And if I might, can I just add something? This is Teresa Parsons in engineering. And I just wanted to say also, this group right here is keeping their eyes open, making connections with these organizations that have the money. And they are really going above and beyond, keeping their eyes open for what's available. So you deserve credit for that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. I was going to add too that, because we're not just designing projects, using the grant money to design something that may sit on the shelf for a little bit. We're actually using their funds for construction. So when the funding agencies then go to the legislature, at budget time, they're able to show, look, we've put this many projects in the ground. And, the state money, the state funds that have been allocated they can show that they're being used and well used and actually making a tangible product.
Why are we 5 times more efficient than the state in terms of delivering miles per dollar?
Go ahead, Marcus.
I think a lot of it has to do with probably our approach. Trevin and I have listened into some presentations, and there's certain aspects like the state considers a larger number of miles, and the way that they define habitat gain is different than the way that we define habitat gain. So they consider potential a habitat gain to where the current barrier they're fixing all the way up to the very, very end of the system. Even if there's an upstream barrier in between, they'll get all the data all the way up. Whereas we look at actual habitat gain. So that's just a minor example, but I would say it's mainly with our approach. We remain very analytical, as the county engineer described at the very beginning, most bang for our buck. So we have our viable project list that we'll scour through it and say, okay, we can put, for example, the Jones Road project, $600,000 to get potentially 3 or 4 miles of habitat. Well, that's going to be better, more efficient for our program versus going after maybe a $2 million project that only gets you half mile. So I would say it's primarily in the way that we have our process set up and our approach to selecting these projects.
We've also, I think certainly some of the DOT projects are, some of those are certainly bigger in scope too, and more expensive projects.
Yeah.
And a lot of our work is focused on the smaller, a lot of our road system is really the smaller, lower volume roads. So that certainly plays into it as well.
Can I assume on the project map that can I assume that all 21 barriers, like, I don't know what the right terminology is, but was the last obstacle in the chain so that, so that fish can get further up? I mean, when I look at the map, some of these ones in the interior, I was just kind of scratching my head, like, are fish able to get all the way up in here? But I assume that you wouldn't be opening something that was blocked, Go ahead, Trevor.
Oh yeah, you got me jumping in my seat here. This is actually, yes, that is one of the main things that's been from day one is that I did not want to get in a situation to where we have a blockage downstream or doing this potential habitat. I want to make sure that out of the culverts that we choose with the time and money we have to do it, that I'm getting something that is grabbing actual beneficial habitat upstream. So when we come in with our viable project list, there might be some really kind of neat looking numbers on there, but when you go to field truth it, what ends up happening is we find a landowner downstream or a private culvert in some of these cases, and we move to the next one and we try it, and then we scour and put together a packet of projects that's going to give us the most habitat gain for that budget that you've given us. So we are very, very diligent in making sure that what we have when we walk away 50 to 75 years from now is still functioning up and down the stream. That is absolutely key to one thing that we do. And like I said, so when I get out there and I walk a stream from top to bottom, we want to make sure that we don't have some surprise waiting for us in the middle.
And I think that really gives, some validity to the process that these guys have developed and making sure that we are doing the right projects, because there was one of the earlier projects back, I think in the first year of the program or so, looked like a really wonderful project down in the Grand Mound areas, I recall, and came to our attention, I think through the tribal work that you guys did, that there's a railroad barrier downstream that suddenly said, well, no sense in doing this project right now because fish can't get to it. So, a credence to the communication that these guys do with all the regional partners, as well as, the robust prioritization process that they've developed.
Cool. Thank you. I just wanted to say I did see one of the fish signs just yesterday. I was out visiting stream flow restoration projects, and I think it was on Case Road. There's one there. Yeah.
Yes.
So I saw that and it caught my attention. I was like, I don't remember seeing that before, and it was cool. So, it was good timing. I think that's a really good idea. And I guess just connected to that, I want to make a comment just for anyone who's listening to this. These fish passage projects, if you think about the amount of money we're spending to try to undo damage because we didn't plan ahead. And I'm sure, with the court case now, and when it comes to DOT's planning for road projects and the county's planning for road projects, we're going to be thinking about that for the future, so we don't get in this situation. It connects exactly to all the stream. I spent a whole day looking at stream flow restoration projects, just seeing all the money and effort we're having to spend to undo damage because we weren't willing to think ahead. And I know folks don't like, government control or whatever, but they have to realize that when we don't think ahead, we end up just spending more money, and it's more difficult, so laborious to undo ecological damage. So I just would hope that people would look at these fish passage projects, be excited about them, and then take it as a lesson to plan for the future so we don't get in these situations in the future. Robin, I saw your hand, and then I'll go to Ramiro.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just going back to the conversation about one of the reasons that we did this project, while there certainly was the court case moving through the court system, there was a point in time when the county commissioners recognized that they had some money available in REIT 2. And when Romero and I approached the board and said, you've got some money to spend, how would you like to do that? The three commissioners at the time, Sandra Romero, Kathy Wolf, and Bud Blake, embraced the concept of removing these barriers. And it was a commitment to the environment. And the results that have been realized these years later are just a huge testament to their forward thinking. And I just want to recognize that, it wasn't just cover the county's risk. It was a commitment to environment that board made. And just to see the results, it's just an amazing thing.
County Manager.
Yeah, I think it's just on comments, and that goes back to the approach that we have taken on this program. And because we have emphasized to be a first priority. And the reason that I'm stating this, under normal circumstances, fish barrier removal becomes a secondary effect of a transportation project. In most of the jurisdictions that we see across the state, they go through a transportation project, they upgrade the lane widths and everything else, And it just happened that they have to eliminate a fish barrier as a secondary effect of a transportation project. When we embarked on this program, we switched. We totally changed that approach and said, this is not necessarily we need to have a transportation project to resolve the barriers the fish encounter in the habitat. So we're very strategic in terms of what elements we need to do. And the big bang for our buck is really on point. Because the strategy behind all this was to be very specific on the priority base that you develop over the years with the partnership with the tribes and the regulatory agencies to determine what specific projects do we need to address by eliminating the constraint, by eliminating the barrier. And that is probably the big bang for our buck. And that's how this program has been successful. It has been recognized at the state and national level, perhaps international level, as to the efficiency as to how we have gone through the process. And even from the project delivery point of view, there is a very finite amount of time during the year that we can do those improvements, what we call the fish window. And how we have emphasized that, and the board has been seeing this, when the department comes and asks for prefabricated bridges to build ahead of time. And we issue those contracts. When the time comes to do the construction during the fish window, it's just put that in place and do the rest of the work. So I think there is a cumulative sequence of events and strategies that the Public Works Department has put in place to make this program successful. And you talk about the money, you talk about how much the seed money we have, the board has put in front of you, how successful we have been in securing additional grant money. So the cumulative effect, I believe, of all those elements have made this fish barrier program an incredible success. An incredible success from the leadership, the Robin stated, from the hard work that Public Works has put in place to go through this process, and to the continued support by the Board of County Commissioners to make sure that this continues to be something that we need to do for our environment. A few thoughts.
All right, anything else from the team? Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We almost used the full hour. I knew we were.
I guess I got one last thing. Anytime you want to come visit one of them, we'd love to have you. And thanks again. And like I said, it's just a wonderful experience for somebody that's got to do this stuff for a long time. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Trevin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll keep the dollars flowing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. We're adjourned.